Welcome back to the Unpatched Gaming Podcast, where we share games. I'm your host, Zack.
And I'm your host, Tyler. Zack, we're here to jump into some games that I was very excited to play, one of which I think, judged a little too quickly, like we've done with a few other games in the past couple months.
Life comes at you fast.
Yes. But we are first here to talk about some beer. We have the Black-O-Lantern Pumpkin Stout from Wasatch Brewery. Where is Wasatch? That is in Utah. Well, Salt Lake City is in Utah. The Wasatch Brewery Company. I've not had anything from them, but I like this time of year. I like pumpkin-y things. You know, I am a basic white girl. I definitely indulge in the patented PSL. Yes, but we've got a chocolatey...
Have you had Redhorn's Gourd spiced latte?
Gourd spiced latte.
You should try it.
I will.
Pretty good.
I will try it next time I'm in the area. I won't have time today, but Gourd spiced latte?
Yeah, I don't know what... I think they call it the Gordon Ramsay or something.
Oh.
Something silly like that, but it's pretty good.
Okay. Speaking of basic white girl drinks, I don't know if they'll do it this year, but Starbucks was doing something around Christmas time that was like some sort of piney latte. It was like really earthy, amazing. A little dry, and not very sweet either. I don't remember what it was called, but definitely a very piney latte. I would definitely recommend trying that out if you ever decide to go there. We've got a chocolatey, pumpkin-y, and velvety stout here. I'm just going to read this. I didn't even know it was here on the back of the can. I don't know what it says either. What kind of a madman would cross an imperial stout with a pumpkin ale? Our brewers, as it turns out. This rich, chocolatey Frankenbrew is dry-spiced and scary good.
And scary good.
Boo.
It does not smell particularly sweet.
Yeah, maybe should have left it out of the fridge a little longer.
Oh, yeah, definitely for stout. But, oh well, life's all gone.
Yeah, it's been out probably half an hour now. What are you thinking? I smell it. That is a potent fragrance.
It reminds me a lot of like a black lager, actually. It does not have the volume of a stout.
I see it does not have the volume of a stout.
Which
everybody else, if you're watching the video, are just seeing a black void, but stouts are even blacker.
And like there's a thickness to drinking them. It comes from and this is only 6.6 only.
Usually they're like upwards of 10.
Yeah, or
sometimes
at the very
even more.
Least 8, you know?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot.
I typically see around 9.
And so without that volume, it makes me think
more.
like a black lager or something.
Interesting, yeah.
And it's not particularly pumpkin-y, which I like.
Yeah, you're definitely getting more of the chocolate. You're right, the volume is much more akin to, I guess maybe like a watered down stout. And
yeah.
Am I wrong in thinking stouts also don't have the sort of almost like carbonation that other beers have? You know, they're not particularly bubbly.
I think they just don't taste that way. I think they have the same. I just don't think they taste that way typically. I don't know though. Yeah, I typically don't.
But like this is like bubbles you would see from a soda, whereas a stout is like the foam you would see on the side of your cup from a
And
latte.
then like you'd see like the sugar too, like the sugar lines.
Yeah,
as you,
like a glass of wine.
This is
or
not
something.
sweet at all.
It's got a little bit of sweetness, but just the right amount. I like this a lot, actually. I could put a couple more of these in the fridge.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. So moving on from the Black-O-Lantern Pumpkin Stout, we have no games we're talking about today. Actually, we're only talking about new beers. That's not true. Just 2 digital games because Limited Run is very slow, and I didn't get Maid of Sker yet. It's supposed to ship this month, but we'll see. Anyway, Maid of Sker is one of the games we're talking about, along with Visage. This week, we wanted to talk about games that we thought were sort of moving ahead with the legacy of PT. Now, if you have played Maid of Sker, you know that is the furthest thing from the truth. It is not that at all. Visage, however, is not only probably the best example of that, but maybe even one of the only fully released games that are doing it to that scale. A scale to which I will argue is a bit too great.
I think so. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, we will definitely talk about it. Let's jump into Maid of Sker first. Zach, what did you think of that?
You thought I wasn't gonna like it. I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. It reminded me of an old adventure game in a lot of ways.
It's a very classic first-person adventure game.
Yeah, and it's very simple. You can breeze through that game.
I finished it in 2 sittings.
Yeah, you can quick. Just like wildfire, just blast through it.
Yes,
so,
with those noises.
That's how wildfire sounds like for a Texan.
That's probably what your sprinting sounds like in that game. You just run so fast in that game.
And you are wheezing half the time because a lot of the game revolves around sound. The enemies are blind, but they can hear you. If you take in a lot of damage, you're easier to hear. If you're sprinting, obviously, your breath... like this elephantine breathtaking.
Elephantine. That's a good word. Is that a word?
It is, but I'm sure I butchered the pronunciation. It's probably elephantine or something like that. But,
probably.
But little elephantine.
Better catch the time so I can shorten that sound clip.
So yeah, there's basically really not much. You can hold your breath if they get really close to you. You need to hold your breath to go through some certain sections of mist. If you're coughing in certain dusty areas, much like my own home, just
please,
you'll cough, things like that. It's very simple. You move from area to area. There's some light puzzle solving. You're basically trying to find some of these like song recordings.
Yeah, they're cylinders like you would see in a music box, like a wind-up music box.
Yeah,
so
and it's a very unique little environment, very Bioshocky in a lot of ways. That kind of style from that period. It's very, I don't know. It's very it's weird because it's supposed to be like a horror game, but I very much enjoyed being there. It's very calming.
Yeah, surprisingly, it's not really a horror game. It's got a couple spooks, maybe, if you would even call them spooks. I think in my play there was 2 jump scares, and then after that it's just like kind of a darker tone.
Pursued. You're just kind of sneaking your way through things. Like there's not like this overarching like I'm being followed.
No, yet. So Zach did not finish the game. I didn't finish Visage. So we'll have 2 different perspectives for each of these games. They straight up do Mr. X later in the game.
Well, he's even got the same outfit.
Yeah.
Like, it's really weird.
It's just a Victorian Mr. X that is not done particularly well. Nothing in the game really shines. It's, as you put it, a pretty inoffensive game that both of us happen to enjoy quite a bit. I would recommend Maid of Sker. Know that it's not really a horror game. It's a very traditional first-person adventure game.
And the environments are open. It kind of almost feels like you can go back through the environments and stuff. It kind of feels like Resident Evil without guns sometimes.
Yes, until a later patch, they did add guns, which are for some challenge maps. You can try to escape the entire place with, I think, depending on the difficulty, a certain number of saves and lives, and you're getting a bunch of different weapons. And there's a lot of enemies in the game as well, like with different abilities. They turn surrounding enemies invisible. There's a guy that walks around with an old diver's helmet that shoots some sort of beam at you, and a banshee.
See, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's not very good.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately, they're not good. The challenge maps. You might have fun with it. The gunplay is just not great.
Well, that's what I think. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that it does have a very nice atmosphere to be in. I was sort of brought back to my time with Amnesia. Now, Amnesia has much more involved puzzles, is a little more gamey.
Much scarier.
Yeah, Amnesia is an honest to God horror game, especially the first one. So I guess actually Amnesia Rebirth. This would be closer to Amnesia Rebirth. Not so much a horror game, certainly as the first one.
Narrative-driven.
But it is a narrative-driven, light puzzle game. Like even the puzzles in Rebirth are nowhere near.
It's more like just progressing through an area.
Yeah. That is the case here. One particularly large open area that does wind in on itself. The map design is good. I enjoyed going, like, learning the entire mansion and the few paths that lead and connect to outside. However, the encounter design is not very good. I thought a lot of the hallways prevented me later in the game. Specifically in the basement, you have to go back to the basement. Or maybe you did it first, because you can do a few things out of
Yeah, I went to the basement right away, actually, after I got back in.
Okay. I did as well, but there's another part that either I didn't get to the first time or is blocked off until later in the story. But the encounter design there, the hallways that you're going down, don't really allow for any sort of thoughtful maneuvering. It's almost a little trial and error-y.
Yeah, and it can be there can be some moments of, well, let's sit and wait for this very slow enemy to walk past, and then I'll move out. Yeah, like, you can't influence them, really.
But you can also hold your breath and walk at the same time. I walked past enemies a lot. However, if they're already chasing you, you run down like 2 hallways and then duck behind a chair or something. If you have not gone far enough to trigger, them to stop pursuing you,
it's far.
Then they will know exactly where you are. Even if you've been holding your breath the entire time, they'll still know where you are. And they're blind enemies. Like, the whole thing is about sound. I have run 2 hallways away and have ducked behind some furniture. It's really lame.
Yeah, sometimes I just reload.
I had to reload a couple times. And then this is going to be something true of Visage as well. There's one area in the game that I thought was way too big for its own good, and that is where you've stopped playing. That was upstairs.
Yeah, it's a pretty big area.
It takes a long time. It's the longest part of the game. In fact, might be nearly as long as the rest of the game as a whole. It took me probably the better part of my playthrough to get through it. It's very long.
And we'll talk about the Visage part when we get there, because I actually disagree, but for an interesting reason. Because I do agree with your general statement about it.
Okay.
But we'll talk about it when we get there. One thing I wanted to mention is, this game did make me think, what happens when you take guns out of Resident Evil? Like, I've seen a couple arguments online about this. Is like, do guns help in horror? Do they ruin the horror? And it's a really interesting conversation.
Well, horror is such a broad term.
Sure, but like, they're talking about the genuine feeling of horror.
Yeah.
Like, do guns get in the way of that? Do they help that? Can it be both? Things like that. And I have found that giving the player agency tends to actually scare me a little more. When I do have control of some situations and then not others, or something is beyond... Like, so for example, the first time that Mr. X lifted up that helicopter in Resident Evil 2, and I start unloading on him and he doesn't move, that's scary. You know what I mean? Like, all of my agency that I have learned, and I've gotten, I can handle these zombies, I can figure out how to get through there. All of a sudden, they have put this titanic thing that is far beyond what I could ever handle. You know what I mean? That works. On the flip side, in Amnesia, you never have agency.
Yeah.
And that is one of the games I've been the most scared at.
Interesting.
You know?
I think it works both ways, definitely. If it's, it's got to be about, if you're going to give a player agency over a situation, it has to be balanced in a very particular way, because I would not consider Resident Evil 8 to really be a horror game at all.
Except for that one section, yeah.
Sure. That one little experiment that some small team at Capcom got to do, that was great.
Incredible. And that's one where you don't have agency.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
It is, speaking of furthering the legacy of PT.
But see, there is one agency they give you in that you have fully explored and completed a puzzle throughout that area, so you know the area. Mm-hmm. And your first gut reaction upon seeing that creature, since you have no gun, is you remember that little loop-de-loop. And you run that way. That agency made it, like, I wasn't like, well, the game probably just is like, there's nothing I can do, might as well just let this happen. Like, that wasn't my first response. If that's ever your first response, it's not scary.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, because they gave me just enough to go, I can run away from this. I was mortified. Like, genuinely mortified.
Disgusting.
And then you just run away. And then you go to an area that you haven't been to. It's just good game design. Like, it's just really good game design.
Yeah, the rest of Resident Evil 8, however,
It's an action game.
would probably be better with a higher difficulty and on a second playthrough with more guns. There's a few modes where like you get Chris's
you
guns,
get the AK-47 and like whatever.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's not a horror game.
No, it's just a fun action game.
If you're gonna do the guns, gotta strike a very particular balance.
I think that's fair.
And Resident Evil 2 does that very well.
Yeah.
7 to a much lesser degree.
Yeah.
7 is inching towards Resident Evil 8.
Yeah.
But still has a little bit of that, especially in the house before you get out first.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Maid of Sker doesn't really provide anything else to you after they take the guns. I would like to see something where you do have agency, but it's not guns. When you can push something in front of a door and, like a piece of furniture or something, and if the entire house could be interacted with. Open a window and sidle the balcony or something like that to get into another room. Break a window that you haven't opened previously.
That's interesting.
So now you've alarmed someone.
So now I'm thinking about like, you pull a wardrobe down to block a door, and you've been doing this for 4 hours of this game.
Now you can't get through any of the doors.
Yeah,
that would be great.
Yeah. Or like something I think would be great, maybe a little cheap, but I think it's still great, would be you drop it against like a massive enemy and you hear him like boom, boom, bump against the door and you're like, and then he just boom, smashes through the door. You're like, like that would be amazing.
But then you could also sort of, I like this thought experiment. Okay, so a large mansion, like in Maid of Sker, which is very little interaction with anything in the mansion. Just the few interactables.
It's such a nice place to be.
It is, especially outside before the game really even starts. That
gorgeous.
Environment is beautiful.
What did it remind me of? Keep going. I forget, but it reminded me of something very, very.
So we're thinking of a full mansion like Maid
Firewatch.
of Sker.
Reminded me of Firewatch for some reason. I think it's like that kind of, there's not really a good word for it. Almost cell shaded. No, it's not cell shaded, but like that kind of softer animation style. I think that's what did it. But
possibly, and it was also probably some of the vibes you got with that first overlook when you see the lake and your goal down by the lake.
It's really
nice. Interesting. Firewatch. That's a good one. So the full mansion. And then everything in it can be interacted with, almost like, my mind initially went to Prey. So not quite an immersive sim, but if there were a bunch of systems like in an immersive sim, weight, really everything just has a weight to it, like a full wardrobe. Imagine if you could just take the shelves out and then do it. So basic enemies can't, but later on you can slowly push it back open. Whereas a full wardrobe, you need to get an enemy to run down the hallway, a big enemy to run down the hallway. And then you jump out of a window and crawl back around so they know you're in that room making noise. They crash through, so now you get back out of the window and run away.
This is why I love immersive sims.
You have reopened the pathway for yourself.
All that systemic stuff, man. Awesome.
That would, in an immersive sim horror game would be very nice. Prey doesn't quite do it. It is more of an action game.
The beginning of the game definitely has its moments
it does.
When you're more powerless,
but it's also still a much bigger environment.
100%.
Something a little more claustrophobic. And with
something
not
that
so
the
much
game
power.
wants you to take control over.
I definitely want there to be much less power in this fictional horror game we're thinking of. But that would be very interesting. What would the context be? Just like escaping a zombie horde?
Prey, but Pray. Look, God, please don't let this kill me. God, please don't let this kill me.
Yeah. I think that's not allowed. There was a game that was Pray to the Gods, I believe.
I remember that.
With an A,
it had
right?
to be like AE.
Well, they could have just done anything else. That was a very stupid choice.
It was very odd.
Oh, no, it was Pray with an E. Pray to the Gods. And then they could have changed it to an A or just something else.
They did the AE thing?
Yeah. It's like... That's dumb. I was going to give an example, but
I don't.
It's
mind.
a dumb example.
I like that one. Anyway, yeah, that's. I mean, I don't have much more to say about Maid of Sker. It's a game that I think is really unique, though. Like, it's this kind of space I want to be in, and I'm moving through it really fast. And there's some horror-like enemies, but they almost don't seem to fit in this space. It's really weird.
Yeah. Did you? I won't really give any spoilers. So never mind there. It's a pretty old game. Like the way it feels like it did take me back to a time where I was playing point and click adventures, but sort of, I mean, they were first person point and click adventures. This one obviously is not point and click, but it did take me back to like playing Riddle of the Sphinx.
Wow.
I don't know why.
That's weird.
But I got
never played that game.
Oh, it's one of my favorite gifts. One of the best games I ever received. Also probably the cheapest, dumbest game ever. But my uncle picked it up from Walmart like on the way to one of my birthday parties. I was like, here, sure. It was, probably in a bargain bin or something. But I loved that game. I got so much play out of it, and it was just, banking on conspiracies and weird mysteries of the pyramids and the Sphinx.
And this is probably like right around that sweet spot of X-Files happening.
I never watched X-Files.
Oh, really?
I wish I would have as a kid.
Actually, it's not my favorite. I never finished much of it. It's good, though. It's well written.
I would have liked it much more if I saw it as a kid. Now, it probably would be pretty surface level, maybe.
Yeah. It's definitely a primetime show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Just classic primetime show.
Well, neither of us really have much to say about Maid of Sker. I mean, more of that discussion was about a game that doesn't even exist. I would recommend it. Check out the trailers. There is one trailer in particular that focuses on the guns. Just know that those are challenge maps that you get after you beat the game, or maybe even before. I don't know. There's no gun in the main game. It's a straightforward, linear, first-person adventure with some very light puzzle elements. But it's a pretty cool place to be, and an interesting enough story. It's got some. It did take me by surprise. I was not paying enough attention. As soon as it happened, I was like, "Oh, why didn't I connect those dots?" I knew. Do you want me to tell you the ending?
I don't care.
Okay. Well, spoiler for the ending happening right now. You find those cylinders, and throughout the game, every time you save, you hear I forget her name already, but your lover's voice talking to like her mother and a few other people. That is building one character, while the phone calls you get in between levels are building another character, who are the same person. So all of those pre-recorded messages were just before she got brainwashed. And this person is asking you, that you get the phone calls from, that is happening in real time, that is talking to you in real time, is asking you to get those cylinders. We need those cylinders to get out of here. She's lying to you. If you pay attention to all of the save points, that person is intentionally trying to document things so she doesn't forget what really needs to happen. And there has been a counter song written to the song from those four cylinders. So at the end, you can either give the person the cylinders or say, no, I don't trust you. I'll play the song myself. And you play the counter song once you find there's four cylinders and then four pages to the song that you can find. And also throughout those things, you may have heard reference of a siren.
Yeah.
The last siren is locked beneath the mansion, and it's able to mind control people. That's what all these zombie-like creatures are. So if you give her the cylinders, it's enough to stop the siren's song long enough for you to kill the siren and take the siren's voice. Basically become the siren. Or alternatively, you can play the counter song long enough for something else to happen and you free the siren, which is out in the world, but is not really going to cause any harm.
So it's not like a malicious creature. It was being used maliciously kind of thing?
Yeah, or even if it was a malicious creature.
I remember reading the documents about the creature.
Yeah. Even if it is a malicious creature, it is the last one, and it's not some, like, otherworldly monster. Like, someone else might just shoot it down. It doesn't seem like a particularly violent creature. No, it was certainly being used. So you can either free it or have her become the siren. But I gave her the cylinders right away. I was like, yeah, I'm running up the stairs. I see her. She's like, do you have the cylinders? And I click it immediately. And I saw that the other option was, it's still spoilers here if you turn that off for a minute. I saw that the other option was, no, I don't trust you. But I immediately clicked give her the cylinders because, like, that's what I've been working towards. And as soon as I did, like, as soon as you click it, she sort of chuckles at you. And I knew exactly, like, I just didn't connect the dots, even though it was so apparent to me that was happening. So, just a really dumb moment. So incredible. I watched the ending, reloaded, and did the one I would have done if I paid attention.
Incredible.
It's fine. It's good. Play Maid of Sker if you want a good 3.5 hours. But let's move on to our next game. We are here to talk about Visage.
And I want to frame it with a question.
Okay.
An interesting question. Where's the line between inspired by and derivative? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So where's that line? And so, like, I wrote a couple things down here, right? So I think to not be derivative, there's a couple things a game can do. Is it offering something totally new, something the source material hasn't, didn't, or couldn't explore? I think Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight is inspired by Metroidvania games, but plays, like, it offers so much evolution to that genre. You know what I mean? It is so much more than just... and I'll talk about another Metroidvania here, because the other thing is it doing the exact same thing as the thing it's inspired by, but it has a very unique flair or gimmick to it. And I think Guacamelee. Guacamelee literally is Super Metroid. Every beat of that game is just Super Metroid. It's in fact very intentionally that way. But this, like, rich, Mexican luchador, imagery and the culture of Mexico and all these little pieces that come together, the Day of the Dead stuff. And it's just so beautiful and it's so silly and fun.
It's so silly.
Yeah. And that's enough for it to not just be, well, why would it not just play Super Metroid?
Yeah.
Another example that I have is, like, is it using that source material to subvert expectations? So I think, like, Spec Ops: The Line, right? Like, it is a first-person shooter in order to undermine and subvert the first-person shooter. You know what I mean? But really, like, I don't know. Like, I think I would honestly consider Guacamelee pretty derivative still.
Sure.
I think it's definitely a broad line, and things can kind of go in and out of it. But I think that's a really important question to keep in mind when talking about Visage, because Visage is unashamedly and obviously trying to build off of what PT started. It is really trying to be what PT would have been in a lot of ways. What I wrote here is, like, PT is the shortest-lived well of inspiration. Right? The amount of inspiration that flowed from that little tiny, currently unplayable experience is unprecedented in gaming. Like, unprecedented in most media. Like, that just hasn't happened.
What if Konami releases a physical copy of the demo?
Dude. That would go, like,
incredible.
That. People would flock to that. But Visage, like you said earlier, feels like the first attempt to see through the ideas that were started in PT. And that's, I think, an important context for what we're going to talk about when we talk about this game.
Well, not quite the first attempt, but the first one that made it all the way to the finish line. Rest in peace.
Sure.
Addison Road.
That's definitely what I meant.
I know what you meant. I just want to mention
thank you for clarifying.
Addison Road. It's in my heart.
Oh, dude, that's horrifying. Horrifying. And Silent Hills, too. Like, what a shame.
Yeah.
And I don't think Silent Hills would play much like PT. Like,
no.
I don't think it would have. PT.
I think they're just playing with some tech. It's a tech demo, and they did an interesting thing that turned out to be much more than just interesting.
Yeah.
Thank
you, Kojima.
Turned out that 2-hour experience, not even 2 hours, it's really short.
Fundamentally shook how people thought about horror videos.
Yeah, really incredible.
Dude, like, that guy, he made Metal Gear, he made PT, and then he made Death Stranding. What a weird and incredible person. I love him. I love you. Much like Jeff Keighley loves you.
He does.
Unreciprocated love. Unrequited love. So yeah, I guess the way I have the conversation phrased is a little bit like kind of structured, a little odd. So the only thing I want to mention before we start digging into the chapters and talking about the game is that it's important to remember that PT was built to be a community discovered ending. Like, it's supposed to surprise you that it's Silent Hills. You know what I mean? It was built to be obscure, not only for horror, but it was built to be obscure because he wanted people to take a while to figure out what this even was. You know what I mean? Like, it just dropped on the store. Nobody knows that, like, it was a fake developer name, you know? And when he was interviewed about it later, Kojima said, well, I wanted to, and I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but I wanted to, I thought about what makes a game scary, and I wanted to strip away all comfort from the player. Like, even conventional game design, like, best practice. Like, he said, I even wanted to take that out. Like, these are obscure, stupid... Do you know the final puzzle of PT?
I don't.
You have to go and, like, I think, like, stand at the radio, wait for, like, click the radio. Maybe it's a phone or something. And then you have to walk exactly 10 steps and stop. Wait for a baby to cry. And then there's a couple different... Go to a mirror. And all while not getting killed by the ghost. Like, really obscure. Because it was supposed to be a community-found solution, right? He's intentionally making it obscure. But even throughout the game, it's like, you don't even know half the time why the game is progressing. Like, just because you looked at something on the wall in a certain way. Like, he literally stripped out everything to comfort the player. There's no, like, UI. There's nothing. And it thrived on that obscurity. And I was very interested to see what Visage would take from that. Because Visage is meant to be a complete game. Mm-hmm. It is not meant to be this community-discovered thing. You know what I mean? And it has very obvious tutorial prompts that pop up and show you. It has a UI for your items. You know, it shows you what you can interact with. There's a lot of things that are, you know, not obscure. And then there are things that are obscure. Things that, like, I had to look up a guide to figure out what was going on. Like, why?
I definitely had to look at a guide like several times.
Like, why? Like, what? That's how you solved this? Like, what? Who's going to figure that out? So... Yeah,
they're like the bathtub.
Yeah, like, I actually figured that out myself without a guide, but only by, like, hammering my head against it for a while. I was like, well, I bet I'll figure this out. That was weird. But, like, the other stuff, too, that I had to look at a guide for. Like, there were a multitude of spots where I was like, what is going on? That felt very PT. And I don't know if that's for the best.
No, because I don't think it is.
And I put it under the maybes, because I think it did occasionally generate fear for me. Mm-hmm. But I would argue that the amount that it's used for a cohesive... Like, I don't think Kojima would have used that level of obscurity in the full game.
Oh, definitely. In fact, it may not have even been used once, and if it was, it probably would have been for an Easter egg. Not for the main game.
Yeah.
PT, I think, is a completely isolated incident. It would have been more of a Silent Hill game than whatever PT was. Yeah. PT, goodness, this beer is getting to me.
Yeah, it's a good one.
PT, again, I think was a tech demo, and they did some weird stuff in it, and that was about it.
Yeah. They really generated a sense of horror. That was what really did it for them, was the imagery and the constant, like, fear of the ghost. Yeah. Lisa, I think, right? That's the Visage. Whatever the
Lucy, I think, in Visage, right?
Oh, so it is Lisa. Yeah, I think it's Lisa in PT.
Sure.
And they just really made that game scary. Like, even watching the footage, I get scared sometimes. Like, watching the PT footage, I'm like, this is creepy as hell. What is going on?
It looks so good.
It looks amazing.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I'm so sad I'll never get to play it.
Who knows? Maybe you'll come upon a PS4 with it installed.
$1,000.
Yeah,
It's expensive.
maybe if I ever see a PS4 at a garage sale, I'll ask if I can.
Well,
plug
they have
it in.
people like remaking it, like
Yeah, those are still up.
Yeah, surprisingly.
Interesting.
And even if something's not up, you can find it.
Sure.
Yeah, that's anyway. But yeah, it's very unique. I think that was the thing I was most worried about going into the game was the obscurity. It's like because that's not what I think people should take from PT. I think they should take the ideas of like not giving the player a comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's like stripping away the things that are more typically comfort to the player.
None of the obscurity in Visage came across to me as it did in PT, or it would have. I didn't play PT either, just watched it like the rest of us who missed that small window in history. So I only watched it. None of it in Visage came across to me that way. It just came across as poor puzzle design.
Okay, I'll make a caveat there, and it's my favorite thing about Visage is when you come to the end of a chapter, you have learned the way that certain parts of like how the lurker for that chapter works. You've learned where you need to go, how everything's laid out. The house will actually change a little bit based on the chapter, which is really interesting. And you've gained a sense of comfort over that. You've learned how to progress through the space. And the second you start the next chapter, you not only is the space different now, but you have no idea what you're supposed to be doing yet. Like you just kind of have to go with your gut and follow the little clues the game leaves for you. And it takes that sense of control away again. And I liked that obscurity of like, not only do I not know what the house is like anymore necessarily, I don't know what to do, what to look at, where to go, what to interact with necessarily. And I like that. And as you progress through the chapter, you get more of a sense of this is how this works. There's a couple wrenches thrown in maybe, but you get a sense of the space and how to survive, and you get that control again. And I really liked that kind of obscurity because I don't think it's not puzzle obscurity. It's just kind of pulling the rug out from under you. And then, but there's enough there for you to figure it out without having to look at a guide. You know what I mean? But the second you get to puzzle obscurity and like true progression obscurity, later in those chapters, I agree. It doesn't work as intended.
Yeah. I will agree with that caveat. I mean, the progression, the puzzles, just learning how to get the chapter started, is not particularly, I don't think it's poorly designed. I think it could have been communicated early on the kind of obscurity that's being used.
That's fair.
For example, in chapter 2, to progress, you need to take a shoe from one corner of the room, a slipper on the floor.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And you need to put it on the bed next to another slipper that it cannot be interacted with. Only the slipper on the floor in the corner can be interacted with. And it's just a slipper sort of tucked under a nightstand or something. It's totally innocuous.
Yeah.
If that level of obscurity would have been communicated early on, I wouldn't have bloodied my forehead on my computer desk trying to figure out what the hell was going on.
Yeah. And I get why they why they wanted that done, because there are some things in that room that are going to be essential for you to be aware of for how to progress the rest of the chapter. Those things are all there. And I get why they did it. But I was about to say, there's a better way to do it.
There's a better way to do it, but everything else in that room is clearly communicated.
Yes.
The different color of the picture frames that you take off the wall, and there's a peephole.
Yeah.
There's 2 picture frames.
I actually think the strongest puzzles
color.
overall were from that chapter. Like the painting puzzle, where you have to move the paintings. And it's from that room you have to look in and see the order of the paintings. Like, I really like that. I thought that was awesome, actually. Mm-hmm. I think... Yeah, her chapter had the best. But let's back up. Let's back up for a little bit. And I want to talk about the most important question, which is, did you find this game scary? Because that's what a lot of people talk about with this game, is how scary this game is. How did you find it?
I found it pretty unsettling at times. it was tense. I'll say that. I maybe have and I don't want to sound super pretentious here. I'm sorry if I do. I do have a tolerance. I find, something like Hereditary and Midsommar much more scary than something like this, because they are, to my core, unsettling. Whereas a jump scare or a twitchy creature running at me down the hallway is tense. And I like that, and this game does it well.
Yeah.
That's most people's definition of scary.
Yeah.
So I'll say yes.
See, you don't deserve to call yourself pretentious. I'm the guy who thinks the scariest movie ever made is Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah.
So that's that's maybe I'm the pretentious one there.
I won't disagree, not one bit.
Yeah, but all that to say, I think I agree with you. This game is very good at unsettling you. The one that really did it for me, the moment that really got me, is there's a scene, and it's so obvious, and I knew it was coming, but it still got me. There's basically, you find the study for Dolores, who's the second chapter, an old lady, her husband, and he's been stabbed with like 20 knives, and there's a missing knife, and you can find the knife and put it back into his chest and he'll like open his hand, and you find a key to be able to progress. In the same room, there's a hidden door, and that's the key for that door, and you go back and you find one of the items you need. It's a little baby, what are those called?
I don't know what they're called, but the things you put atop a crib, and it just turns around and plays music.
Yeah, there's a name for it, and anyway,
do those exist outside of movies?
I think they do exist. Yeah.
Oh,
I think I've seen one.
I don't
maybe
think I
not.
have.
Maybe I haven't. Maybe it's just like media lying to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you have to find five toys
Mm-hmm.
to put atop this to progress, and that's your main thing you're looking for in this chapter. What's really interesting though is like you put it in him, and you're waiting for him to like jump at you, and he just doesn't. And so, but you have to go back with your back turned into this room. I'm like, oh, he's gonna get up. I know he's gonna get up. I know he's gonna be right there. And so I get the stuff, and I turn and I walk around, and he's not like right behind me. And I'm like, he's gonna be in the room. And sure enough, he's right there walking toward you. There is nothing you can do. You run and try the handle on the door. It doesn't work. You're like, oh my god. Like, it's just really well put together, and then he's gone. Like, it's something where there was nothing I could do, and yet it still scared me because of that door. If that door wasn't there, it wouldn't be scary. It'd be like, well, there's nothing I can do. Yeah. That little door at the back, you go and you try it, like, no! Like, your one way out isn't working. Because there are times in the game where you do have to run and through a door. And this time it's locked, and then he's gone. That really got me, dude.
You do have to close the door for him to disappear. You have to close the door on him. He'll if you leave the door open, he'll just walk in and kill you.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And this is true of actually most of the things in the game I found. Closing the door shuts out whatever like mode of fear is currently encroaching.
Yeah, shutting the door is super helpful.
Yes.
Yeah, I found that out way too late. I was already on my second chapter before I figured that out. So yeah, I'd say that's really good. Another really just genius mechanic, and it's been done before, but just really well implemented here, is the camera.
Yeah.
The camera's so good.
Those are really good.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's totally dark. Your lighter doesn't really light up too much. And the camera is, like sub-second flash. Like, it will just really quick show something. And it's dark, and you're looking for things and people.
Oh, and then it has to recharge.
Yeah, and it has a moment where
you really have to, like, let that burn into your retina for a moment. And then run forward. During the 3-second recharge. It's maybe not
and
that
like
long.
The little girl, like, you snap the picture, and like I remember the room where you have to basically find a key and go to the door, and there's a bunch of wardrobes and stuff all around, and she's waiting right in the middle there for you. That room's great. Like, I was really tense because I get to the door and I try the handle. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, it's locked. Like, I was so tense. And thankfully she actually didn't get me in that one, which I was surprised. I thought I was definitely gonna get got, which just made it better, because when you don't die in a section like that, it's even like you don't get that tension relief.
Yeah.
So I was just really tense through that whole section, snapping pictures. I think they did fear very well. It, like you said, is very surface level tension. You called it.
At least in the first 2 chapters. And the house itself.
Let's just not talk about that yet. We'll get to it.
Okay, we'll definitely get to it.
I want to talk about I want to talk about a couple other things. So the format for the game, usually we talk about this first, but a lot of people will recognize Visage based on its, streamer, how easily streamable it is.
Yeah.
Visage was released slowly. It was in early access for a long time, and they released a total
2 years, I think.
Yeah, 2 years. I guess that's not long based on early access these days, but it was a playable game released in chunks, and they released chapter 1, then 2, then 3. And the game was then considered complete.
And the house, I think, sort of evolved, or rather, the space may have been complete, but the interactivity within the house itself between chapters likely also evolved.
And there is one moment of comfort in every single, it happens at the end of every chapter where you come back into the house is back to the modern, look of the house. It is back to a consistent look, the same way it will look every time you come back from a chapter. And this soft music plays, and even though it's a creepy house, I felt at peace. It was really weird. I liked being in that house.
It's a bit of a relief, even though later on enemies do come.
Yes.
After you complete your first chapter, which only ever happened once for me.
Yeah, it only happened once for me as well.
You have to trigger them, and they're so easy to not trigger.
Yeah.
There's almost always a way around them.
So, but even with that, I felt very much I liked that. It was kind of that Darkwood effect where it's I know I belong in the forest kind of thing, But yeah, I really enjoyed being in that space, and that's where you start. There's a really bizarre cutscene, that doesn't seem to match. I know it does, but I didn't investigate. This is a richly detailed environment. I'm sure if I gave my time to it, I could figure.
So I didn't finish it. Total spoilers here. The game's been out for a while now. So anything further than this will be straight up spoilers. You finished the game, right?
Yes, I didn't get either of the endings. I didn't bother.
Oh, what happens?
I
guess with whatever happened with you, what happened with that ending?
No, I didn't do that. I just stopped after chapter 3.
Oh,
you can get it. You can get.
You have
two
to
endings.
Trigger the ending.
Yeah, there are 2 endings you can get.
Okay.
The first one, the default one, is very odd. I can't even remember what the default one is, but the other one, you find a little hole in the basement. You can tear down a part of the wall, and there's a gun in there, and you can keep shooting yourself in the head, and it'll show you where all the video cassettes are, and you go and find all the video cassettes, and then they all reveal locations, and it's all pieces of this mask. And when you put the whole mask together, you are locked away into a dark, endless void.
Oh, I was in the middle of doing that because I did find that before even starting my first chapter. I explored as much of the house as I explored a lot of the house. Nothing is really locked off. I don't think anything is locked off.
No, it's
for the chapters, right?
Explorable.
Okay, so I explored a lot of the house before I even started the first chapter and found that very early on, and did shoot myself, and it starts the game back over, and then I found I think 4 of the 7 videotapes and did a few that I think I got 3 of the mask pieces.
You're basically locked away into the void for eternity. It's very odd.
Interesting.
Yeah, the default ending is a little bit you go back with your family or something like that, or I don't know. I didn't finish the game. I didn't feel the need to. I almost didn't want an ending. I kind of liked the idea of just eternally being in this limbo of this house.
What does it ever revisit that opening cutscene?
No.
What?
It's very weird.
That's bizarre.
Yeah.
What's the point of that cutscene?
Well, there's 3 people. I think that's pretty telling.
Sure.
And 2 females and a male, I believe.
Yeah.
I think maybe what they're indicating is the tragedy of that event has because the way I understood the game is these 3 people's chapters are different times in this house's life, right? This is much it's not just these all people live together and it's telling one story. It's 3 separate stories in the same house.
Definitely.
I think that event occurred in this house, and I think that maybe you were the one to do it, the character that you're playing was the one to perform that heinous action, and that has awakened these 3 spirits from the strength of that evil action. That's this is totally me just speculating, and then you are now, because of what you did, having to live through the lives of 3, the 3 ghosts of this house. And then the true ending, getting all the mask pieces, you are locked away in hell forever, basically, or like a limbo forever because of what you did. That's what I would assume.
That is a pretty decent explanation.
Yeah, I bet it's totally wrong, and like people are gonna be like, "You should read this Reddit post where it explains everything."
Yeah,
Like,
that's good. We'll go with that.
So
Don't want to hear your Reddit post. Unless, of course, you share it on our Discord, which is currently open. Link in the description. Come join us. Come talk about Visage.
Hey.
That's right.
So yeah, there are 3 chapters in this game. The first one, I think you would say is the strongest. Is that what you'd say?
I don't...
They both have their problems?
No, I don't think any of them are the strongest part of the game.
That doesn't make sense.
Yes, it does. Because there's basically a 4th chapter, which is the house as a whole, that you can explore and unlock those videotapes that all have really bizarre stuff. Like, did you do did you finish the one in the kitchen with the coffee cup?
No.
So
I didn't finish it.
So you after the kitchen is finished talking to you. So you walk into the kitchen.
It's the best moment in the whole game.
You walk into the kitchen. It's even weirder. Just wait. It's even more bizarre. You walk into the kitchen and all the appliances are having a yelling match about seeing what happened to some old lady. And you're just standing there.
They're like opening like an old Disney cartoon, like the oven's like flapping open.
It's really
hey,
dumb.
what do you mean? I want to hear what she has to say. And it's like the freezer and fridge. What, I can see everything you can see. You're on top of me. Like, it's just so
and she's
silly.
like, no, you're asleep half of the time. And so it's the freezer.
Very like Evil Dead 2, like the room fixtures like laughing at him. Because it ends with them just laughing maniacally. Yeah. It's amazing. And it's the best part of the whole game.
Just very abruptly ends. So,
did you get that footage?
Oh yeah.
Okay, good.
Oh yeah. So on the counter is a coffee cup, and I think if you interact with the coffee cup, your character is like, oh, I'd really like some hot chocolate. So in one of the drawers,
I made the hot chocolate.
Find some hot chocolate.
Yeah.
You made it. You put it in the microwave, and it disappeared.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it disappears, and I don't know when you have to do this. I don't know when it triggers. But eventually you can go back up into what looks like an older brother's room. I don't know.
Yeah.
The boy child. You go into his room, and the what is it called? The wardrobe is missing. Instead, there's a portal into another world. And you walk up to the portal, and the cup of hot chocolate floats out, and you drink it. And at the bottom of the cup, there's a mask piece.
That's incredible.
It's bizarre.
That is incredible.
It's really nuts. So the house has a bunch of weird stuff with these videotapes. Did you do the one where you go shopping for beer?
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of weird stuff. All of that is the best part of the game. I don't think either of the 2 chapters that are worth any salt, the third one is garbage, we'll talk about it, are the best part. Out of the 2, however, I don't know. They're both pretty equal for me. Because the first one, Lucy's chapter, takes place outside a lot. It has I think a slightly more coherent narrative.
Yes.
It definitely has a through line, and I liked that through line. I liked the monster, though I liked the crazy old lady also.
Yeah, she's great.
They're both really good. But the other one,
I like the
what's her name?
hellscape in
Dolores?
Dolores' chapter. Yeah.
The hellscape.
Like when it's just like the whole house becomes this flesh, like
yeah,
in like its uterine wall, and the faces. That's the one I wanted to use for the thumbnail. Is the face like with the tendrils coming out of its mouth?
I don't recall that.
It's like on the wall. It's just a human face, and there's like these.
Oh yeah, I did see that.
I took a snapshot.
I did see that.
So maybe you
we'll see.
Tyler's the man. With
we'll see. But I liked that level a lot. It takes place almost entirely in the house. It does take place entirely in the house, but some other things open up. Maybe rooms that have been buried, that are no longer... It looks like this house is close to 100 years old. Just been remodeled a few times. So there are rooms that at least no longer exist. Maybe never did. Not sure. But it takes place there. That is the longest part of the game by far. Probably longer than the other 2 chapters combined.
The Red Dolores, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dolores. And this is where, so that's the second chapter that was released. They entered early access with Lucy and, of course, the house, which probably didn't have as much going on. Later on, Dolores was released, and then they launched, they went 1.0, or I guess in this case 3.0, out of early access with the third chapter. Forget what his name is.
Rockin'.
Something like that.
It's Rockin'. I wanted to call him Rakan. That's what it looked like to me. But yeah, it's the way they said it in game was Rockin'. So whatever.
It's longer than those two, and I think to its detriment. It's got good puzzles in there. I like the painting. There were probably a few others that I can't think of off the top of my head that were good, but there's 11 of them.
The little like baby orb.
Yeah, that was
that one.
Not so much a puzzle, but I liked that space.
Yeah.
It wasn't convoluted.
Well, I mean, you get the orb, you open the orb, then you have this paper, and you have to go to that room and like turn all the things.
That's just the right level of obscurity.
Yeah.
Now, see, those three things we've mentioned are already pretty good. Those three sort of surreal spaces mixed with the house itself, which does morph in this chapter, and you've got her, Dolores, chasing you, and she does that thing that drives me nuts. You know, like a part of her body will twitch, typically her head, maybe sometimes her hands or something. But it, like, I don't get like shivers down my spine hardly ever. That every time, even in Avengers, when Scarlet Witch, I think it's the first time. Oh no, it's in what is that called? Civil War? Yeah. She sort of like creeps behind a door really quickly and like takes a dude's memories. I don't remember, but they use those effects on her, which I think they should have continued doing. Even that gets me.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is, but that always gets me.
For me, it was
every context.
The husband with the knives that sent shivers for me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that got me.
So there's plenty of good stuff there, but there are 11. So anytime you enter into one of these spaces, you have to break a mirror and walk through the mirror into a new room. There are 11 of them. There's too many, in my opinion, and they all have something to do with at least one other mirror. So you've really got to break them all and figure out how they connect with each other. Yeah. I think it could have done it without like half of them probably. Okay. I think there's too much. It becomes too convoluted, and that one chapter alone is longer than most other games that are doing something similar. So I think it overstays its welcome.
My defense of this is unique because I do think that it's too long, but I also think that this is the second chapter released after, this insanely detailed house and just, jam-packed first chapter. My money says that the people who were watching this as it were coming out played this chapter very slowly. And they would really thoroughly explore each part behind these mirrors, and they would put the pieces together themselves. And I think the primary audience of this game, especially as it was coming out, would be taking multiple sessions to get through this, and you and I breezed through it. And that's not to say we played it wrong. I think the game should, that to its detriment, it should be encouraging. If that's the way it's designed, it should have an intrinsic motivation for the players. An extrinsic motivation for the players where it's showing you how to play and enjoy this a little better, right? So I'm not giving it a pass, but I do think that should be considered in terms of how it was released and the kind of people who were following at that time. I bet you they ate this chapter up and played it over the course of 3, 4, maybe 5 sittings.
Maybe. And if the Dolores chapter,
because that's my favorite,
were
chapter.
Its own game, the house, of course, and then you start the chapter and the hallucinations occur. If that were the whole game, I probably wouldn't have this complaint.
Sure.
But the game is 10 hours.
Yeah, it's
at least.
It's a long game.
Games like this, Resident Evil isn't even that long. You can't find an 11-hour Resident Evil game.
Yeah.
They're paced that way for a reason. And I don't think that was particularly considered here. I think it's pretty bloated. I like the ideas in the first 2 chapters. Again, we'll mention briefly the third chapter and why it's really just terrible. And maybe you should try to trigger one of the endings without that chapter. It's a very big detriment to the game. But certainly without the third chapter, I might think a little differently.
Maybe.
But even still, the game is, 9 hours or so without the third chapter. I just think for what it's doing, it's too much of that thing. And in too many different ways. Everything is so disparate, especially in that chapter. Every aspect of the chapter itself is pretty disparate until you find the very loose connections to each one. Like you're doing some crazy thing and you found a knife. Okay, well, you probably didn't even find the mirror yet that goes into that. So now you're just walking around with this knife and don't know what to do. There are good ideas there. But I think this is a common symptom of sort of freshman developers. I have been on Kickstarter for right around a decade now. Maybe whenever the Ouya came out, that was the first one. I was like, wow, that's awesome. And I've been backing games since that. I remember that was the first Kickstarter that I paid attention to. And even if I'm not backing things on Kickstarter, I definitely had my ear to the ground for quite a while, not so much anymore, because video games on Kickstarter are becoming less and less popular. All the rage for board games, though. That's where board games are made, is Kickstarter. However, this is a very common thing to see. They asked for way too little money. You can't make a game like this for that amount of money. And they received about 3 times that much, 4 times maybe, and still didn't have enough to do what they wanted. Because, again, being new designers, I'm sure they got all this money and were like, wow, here's all of our ideas, and just kept piling ideas in there and little bitty mechanics, and didn't think about the cutting room floor, which is there for a reason.
So I get where you're coming from. I actually don't think... Well, I think that is very, very valid. I actually don't know if that's the primary issue. You know what I think the primary issue is... Chapter 1 is very PT.
Mm-hmm.
Chapter 1 is the most PT out of all of them.
And pretty short.
And the camera, right? The camera flash, the weird bathroom puzzle, like it's obscure, like it's very much a PT experience. It just ends very abruptly with her ripping her jaw off. It's awesome.
Oh, real quick, before I forget, in the bathroom, the guide that I watched pointed this out, and I definitely didn't see it at the time. But if you stand behind the glass of the shower, you can see Lucy in the shower. Really obscured because of the kind of glass it is. Those like glass ice cubes that make up a wall. So she's there in the shower.
That's awesome.
And then if you look out of the really small window that's in the bathroom, her spirit is there shaking violently, watching her take a shower. But then I snapped a picture accidentally. I'd opened the thing, the water was turning, and I was looking around trying to save my lighter, but I snapped a picture, and you catch her in the picture, and then she disappears in the shower.
No way.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, and then the little guy watching you from the mirror, and it's really good. I liked that section. Anyway, yeah, so it's the most PT. And then you can see them really trying to carve out their own identity with the second chapter. There's a lot more supernatural elements outside of just the thing following you, like the weird, uterus spaces. There's a lot more kind of exploration storytelling. Like you said, all the mirrors, the little outside park area, like lots of just, ideas that are maybe growing out of what PT was doing, but definitely less PT. It's definitely more of what they were going for themselves.
And it's also sort of an inverted... this thought isn't complete. I'm only just now forming it. Sort of an inverted take of the first chapter, in that you're seeing... every character in this game is haunted by something. And... each of the characters in the 3 chapters. Whereas Lucy, you're witnessing the haunting happening externally, the entirety of the second chapter, visually and in the narrative of it, is about what happened to the character internally. And you even go into spaces, like weird mind spaces, in the second chapter. Whereas the first chapter, you go to a playground, a treehouse, and you see how the world was affected by this girl's haunting. Whereas in the second chapter, you see how this woman was affected by the haunting.
Yeah.
That's all. Just a little thought.
Yeah, and you can really see it in chapter 3. When chapter 3 does not resemble PT in the slightest. It looks just like...
Or chapter 2.
Yeah. Wait, what?
It doesn't even resemble...
Oh, I get what you're saying. Yeah, no, not at all. It feels like you're playing a generic, weaponless, contemporary indie horror game.
Yeah.
There's running away. There is...
trial and error.
A lot of it.
I'm really tired of trial and error, man.
Yeah, it sucks. There are better ways to make video games.
We've complained about it in each episode.
Yeah, I think it's just core to a lot of horror.
Oh God, just wait until next week. Hopefully there's none. Old trial and error from PS1. Yeah, I'm gonna want to pull my eyebrows out.
Yeah, I actually, from what I know about Silent Hill, the biggest issue is the puzzles are just really
obscure.
Really obscure.
Okay, I might have to keep a guide handy.
Yeah, it's definitely like don't feel bad about a guide kind of game.
Yeah,
from what
I typically don't anymore.
It depends on the game.
With a game like this,
depends on the game. Yeah.
If I'm pressed for time, I'll have to use one, and then if it just if I die 3 times, not of my own agency, I don't care about your encounter anymore.
Yeah, I agree. It's very, and this whole final chapter is just that. It's so uninspired and really it's just not exciting. It's not scary.
No, so it's not.
You're just banging really your head against a wall for a while.
It is.
There's that specifically that. Did you get to the hallway where you open the elevator doors and you crouch your way through one of the hordes of
that's
people?
The last thing I did.
And then you have to run through this hallway and basically just guess what the right way to go is. Mm-hmm. And guess how to distract the enemies and guess that they're not going to be behind you. It's
really bad.
You're literally a rat in a maze.
And I wish the chapter would have ended there. I finished that encounter, got back into the house, and I looked at the guide, and there was at least 2 more
massive sections. You go right back to the hospital. The hospital is a terrible area. The house is your strength. Why am I in this hospital?
Yeah. You so in the 3rd chapter, you are being chased by again the person who was haunted. He suffers from paranoia and just crazy.
There's a name for the phobia of being watched.
Okay, yeah, whatever that is. And a demon is stalking him, basically. So there's a demon stalking him. He mistakes you for the demons. All of the doctors in the hospital are presented as demons. In fact, the guide I was watching called them patients. They are not. They are the doctors.
Well, some of them are patients, though. I'm pretty sure.
Well, I could be wrong. I definitely could be wrong, so I won't make a definitive statement. But just given what I learned about the character up to that point with that rat in the maze moment, and then when you finish that part of the chapter, you see him strapped in a chair, trying to get out, or in a hospital bed trying to get out, and the other creatures, whatever they are, patients or doctors, standing around him. They look like they're talking to him.
For sure.
I took them all as doctors.
Okay. I don't know.
I could be wrong. I'm not sure. However, you trigger something in the house. There's a few different things you can do. You can only do one at a time, whereas both of the other chapters you can actually do in any order. And the house itself, you can do anything in any order. It's nice. I enjoy that part of the game. In this game, in this chapter, it is completely linear. You have to do each one of these encounters in order, and then it's typically running down hallways away from him, finding a button to press here, a key to find there, whatever, and then going to the place you couldn't progress through before, And then oftentimes, to get back to that place, you have to run in circles to distract whoever's chasing you to get back there.
There's a boss encounter.
That's just great.
Yeah, there's a giant eye behind you, and you have to find something to stab it, but he is chasing you in full light. There's no like trying to disguise him or anything, and you just have to sneak through some chain link fences and get around him and find the knife, which is randomly placed somewhere. So even if you fail the first time, it's going to be somewhere else this time, and then you have to run back and stab the eye. Fully go into the inventory, stab it, like, yeah.
Wow.
It's not very good.
Seems fantastic.
Yeah.
So,
just don't play Chapter 3.
Yeah, I would recommend completely skipping Chapter 3. You don't need it to complete the game. In fact, now that I know that, I probably won't. We're pressed for time, and we're going to play Silent Hill 1 and 2. But I would be much more inclined to finish the game, because I was enjoying doing the videotapes and getting those mask pieces. I have 3 of the 7. So I would be much more inclined to finish the game now, and I recommend you skip Chapter 3, which is, there's 2 ways to activate it. After you've done the first and second chapter, there is a wheelchair in the living room. Alternatively, at any other point during the game, there is a crutch leaning up against the stairs. Both of those things activate the chapter. Just skip it entirely. It's really bad. And I describe it as trite. I have seen the paranoid man, admitted to a hospital and scared of the doctors before. I have, seen this sort of brand of horror enough times. And then you're not Resident Evil, black gooey masses with eyeballs. Doesn't work anywhere else. It's just bad, all of it. Again, trite. The corridor chase scenes, the black gooey eyeballs, and the setting as a whole. I think it's bad. Really bad.
But it is a chapter unto itself, and therefore you should still play Visage, in my opinion. Especially if you're looking for a game that I think is genuinely scary in quite a few spots.
It is. I just think Chapter 2, and I'm glad you don't have to finish them. I didn't know that. That actually knocks it up a bit, because you can completely ignore Chapter 3. Very happy to hear that. And nothing in the house is locked off by any chapters. I don't think.
I'm pretty
certainly
sure
not Chapter 3. There is something in Chapter 1 you can only get there. 3 of those dolls. Did you get any of the dolls? Yeah, so 3 of them can only be found in Chapter 1.
Yeah, the dolls will become inaccessible if after
only Chapter 1. There are 3 that can only be.
I think there's actually.
I looked at a guide to find, because I spent too long looking for them. I was having fun looking for them all, and before I started Chapter 1, because I did 2 first. I did Dolores' chapter. I made sure to look. 7 of them are in the house. 3 of them are specifically in her chapter. They don't get you anything, though, unfortunately. Just an achievement. I thought something would happen, with the paintings or the cup of hot chocolate, which is just incredible. All those Visages. In fact, a game like this is probably at its best when it is small, very digestible vignettes, which the entire house is filled with those videotapes. And then Chapter 1 is certainly longer than any of those, at about 45 minutes to an hour. Still just fine, totally digestible. Chapter 2, potentially even 4 hours. Most games of this ilk are wrapping themselves up at that point. And then it's got another 2.5 hour chapter after that. Those small vignettes really do it for me. The weird, totally bizarre, buying beer on sale, and being a drunk father. The kitchen, we've mentioned it 3 times already. It's so good. That's what I think works best. Chapter 2, I think, has too much going on. Overall, I think it's pretty good. Definitely scared me quite a bit. definitely we've already talked about my definition, I guess. But what you're looking for in a scary video game, this has it in spades, I think the phrase is. I don't have much else to add about Visage, though.
Me neither.
Okay. So in summary, it's scary. You should play it. Skip chapter 3. And don't be afraid to look at a guide for chapter 2. Don't be afraid to look at a guide. Please. Unless you want to do that. If you're streaming for the first time with a new audience or something, yeah, that would be fun over a few days. But if you're just trying to get through some horror games this season, you might need one. Some of those are in... The 11 mirrors are in such obscure places. The house change. I'm going to rant about this just for a moment.
Oh, I liked that they were hard to find.
All of some of them are in total BS places.
I don't know about that.
So the house changes. Furniture is replaced where there might have been an end table pushed up against the wall in the house proper. Now in this chapter, it's been removed, replaced with a mirror. There are 2 in particular that I remember that were really dumb. One of them is in a very small cupboard that you can barely
that's
fit
the one
in.
I had to look up. Yeah, that's the one I had to look
There's
up.
one other that I never even considered. I definitely had to look that one up. But then there are 2, possibly 3 ways down into the basement. I think there are 3. But at least one of them I saw. I tried to leave the basement. Yeah, so there are... whatever, it doesn't matter. When I was in the basement, I tried to leave and go up the stairs. However, it's blocked by chains on either side. Like, they're keeping the 2 doors together. It looks like some crazy demon chained up these doors. Okay. And I already knew trying to go down the other way, I could not. That door was locked. I made the assumption those chains were there, which is correct. The door is locked and you can't leave the basement. However, at the top of that second stairwell is one of the mirrors, which you are disincentivized from ever going up because you can't get down that stairwell. And then when you try to go up the other stairwell, you're told, hey, this is why the doors are locked. You can't go through here. So that's actually the last one I found because I never went up that freaking stairwell. I knew you had to trigger the weird loop in the house to go through her dreamscape and then back into the real house to get back upstairs. I was not a fan of that. Everything else I think was, just the right amount of hidden. I don't think anything else was particularly egregious. Those 2 were, though. I think that's it. Anyway, enough about Visage, I think. It's a pretty good game. I'm glad I played it. I would kind of like to finish the masks now, but I probably won't, unfortunately. Skip chapter 3. Maybe check out Maid of Sker. Anything else?
I'm good.
Okay, well, while you check these games out, maybe also check out our newly opened Discord server. We've got a growing community there. It's we've locked it behind our $2 Patreon tier for the past year, but it's now open. Certainly going to be open for the duration of the month. Past that, no comment. But certainly for the duration of the month, you can jump in and come tell us about some of your favorite horror games. Tell us why I'm completely wrong about Chapter 3. It's going to be a hard sell, but maybe you can sell me on Chapter 2. Just come share games. That's what we're all about, sharing games with like-minded individuals. We'd love to have you. Come join the community. Follow us on social. Instagram and Twitter is where we're found. And if you've made it this far, definitely consider a like and a subscribe here on YouTube and a comment on your podcast platform of choice. That is going to be it for us this week. We're going to finish off this series with a huge gap in our
It's about time.
gaming catalog, and that is Silent Hill 1 and 2. Very excited. We'll both be playing the PS1 Classic on PlayStation Network, and I will be playing the Xbox release. I'm really excited, actually, to whip out the original Duke controller and hook up my my Xbox again. I just got that HDMI cable coming or converter coming in the mail.
Yeah, and I'll be playing on PC.
Yeah. So jumping into the classics, man.
The classics.
These are, Visage, maybe you could call it a modern classic. Certainly Resident Evil 2, that remake, a modern classic. That game is so good. Deadwood, Darkwood, every time. Darkwood. But these really shaped.
Yeah, this is
what
why
horror
all
games would
horror
be.
is psychological horror these days. Why every single creature has some meaning in the person's mind.
Yeah.
Because of Silent Hill.
I'm very excited. I've never played anything in regarding Silent Hill. Never been in the same room as someone while they
it's
were
gonna
playing.
be totally fresh for me.
I only know I've seen like a couple screenshots of walking down misty streets. That's about it. Oh, I saw the movie, so I know some of the monsters. I saw that first movie, which actually I liked a lot.
Jonathan Bean.
So yeah, just join us as we wrap up this horror series. Come check us out on Discord and all the social, and we will be back next week. And don't forget to share what you love with who you love.